Happy Friday, everybody, and welcome into the Gramlich and Mac Lane podcast. Mac, another week of just 4 games, kind of odd. I'm not sure if this is how it was last year. I don't remember it being this way, but that means we can go in depth on each of these 4 games. We have a ranked versus ranked matchup in Clemson and Syracuse. We will start there. But first, Mac, I want you to take the listeners and the viewers on YouTube. By the way, we hit 1,000. Shout out. I think we actually are close to 1,100 now. So Syracuse fans, you guys did it. But Mac, what are you doing today? You're cooking some ribs? Is that what you're doing?
I wish that I was on my phone, that I could take you outside to see this, because it's been way too long. You know, baby football season, it's kind of taken away my ability to cook some things that I wanted to cook. And last week I hopped back into the saddle with some chicken wings. This week I'm like, Khaki, we're doing it. We're going Super Bowl. We're going 3 racks of ribs. Ooh. And so that's what I have on there right now. They're smoking away. We've probably got about 5.5 hours left. So it's going to be good. I got to go out there. We might have to cut this episode short. I need to go spritz them with apple juice to make sure that they stay nice and don't dry out at all. So that's what we're doing right now. My favorite time of the year. It's crisp outside. It's a little chilly. Throw on like a little hoodie or something when you go out there. It's the best time. It's the best time.
It is. I like that, Mac. And I know we're recording this on Thursday, by the way. So Mac is making a Super Bowl rack of ribs for the Georgia Tech Virginia game, as is everyone.
It will not. It's not for the Amazon Prime Thursday night 6-3 game. It will not be for that.
Well, D-Hop is back. You know, we'll see what happens. But okay, Mac, I don't know if you want to share the secret. Can you tell the people what you use as your binder? Because I don't think I've ever heard of this before.
You're getting.
Do you want to tell
excited.
people or no?
Absolutely. Okay. So I have this little secret that my cousin saw. Khaki maybe have seen it. I think it was. Let me ask her. Hey, Khaki. Khaki, did you find the Chick-fil-A sauce binder, or was that Rhino? Okay. She was a good cousin. She said we both found it. So
they found it together.
With that in mind, I might give a little more credit to her. So you use Chick-fil-A sauce as the binder. And so for those that don't know, you have like the ribs after you kind of clean them up, do whatever you want to. And then for me, I like to put a binder on there, which is normally a mustard, some people's thing. You can do some barbecue sauce. Most of the time you want to do mustard. So I do Chick-fil-A sauce. And then I put on, which is so good. You need to try it if you haven't.
Yeah.
And then I put on these different rubs from a guy called Meat Church out in Texas. The one that I like right now is called Texas Sugar. It's this brown cinnamon base. It is so good. It's unbelievable. So they don't sponsor the podcast. They should, but go check out Meat Church. Go check out Chick-fil-A. Make your rack of ribs and show it to us on Instagram. That'd be a lot of fun to see.
If you've ever heard of Chick-fil-A, go check them out.
If you've ever heard of that small faith-based company.
We actually will have a condiment and other things joining us again soon here on the pod. So stay tuned for that. But I just thought the people would like a little grilling tip from Mac before we dive into these games here, Mac. Thank you for sharing your wisdom.
That's right. They'll see it yesterday. They'll hear about it today. That's what's going to happen.
Yesterday night. Okay, let's dive into our Big 4 breakdown here. And let's start with the big game of the weekend. Number 14, Syracuse, undefeated, 6-0, 3-0 in the ACC. At number 5, Clemson, 7-0, 5-0 in the ACC. People forget Clemson's already played so many ACC games because they have Notre Dame and South Carolina left on the schedule. So they've got 2 non-conference games left. So with this game, this is a noon game on ABC. It's at Clemson. Tigers are a 13.5-point favorite. The total is at 50. I told Mac that not just this game, but the other 3 games this weekend, I struggled making my picks against the spread. I thought every game I had to really think about. Every game. And Mac kind of laughed at me, so I'm wondering where he's thinking there. But let's start with the Tigers. And Mac, I want to start with Clemson's defense, because one of the main reasons why I was and maybe am considering having Syracuse cover here is because this Clemson defense, with all the hype it had coming into this season, and this is rare for a Clemson defense to not live up to the hype, but it really hasn't. And I think that's a little bit of a concern against the Syracuse offense that has a lot of weapons and is, if you listen to our Garrett Schrader interview, feeling pretty confident.
I'm right there with you. I think it is something where preseason, Yeah, we thought this was going to be a Georgia-like defense.
Yeah.
From a year ago, we thought this was going to be a 2018 Clemson defense. One of the potential, to be the best ever. Especially when you look at that defensive line, and these guys got hit with the injury bug really hard, and some continuity got kind of exposed by a couple of teams early on when you saw screen game and quick game, and really teams all year have been able to throw really well against Clemson, which is a little bit odd. And on top of that, Clemson not nearly, having the tackle for loss and sack number that they've had in previous years, which is crazy to look at when you look at this team's skill set and their personnel. I think one thing that is interesting, KG, is after they have kind of been exposed, if you will, against Wake Forest, they threw for 1 million yards. Sam Hartman just threw another passing touchdown. They responded and played a really good game. Now they kind of were exposed a little bit, by FSU, something that we haven't seen in a long, long time. I kind of reflected back to, my time in 2014 when we played Georgia. I'm sure it might have happened since then, but not with this success that we saw FSU have running the football. Right. And then Clemson had a defensive players meeting only, and I love how those things go.
That's interesting.
When you feel like as a player, as a captain, as a leader of that team, you have to call a players only, that is a come to Jesus. That is, we're going to say things the coaches can't. We're going right at people's necks. We're calling each other out. We're saying, hey, what is the issue? Not sure what that is, whether it's lack of attention to detail, not doing their jobs. Coach Dabo Swinney said sometime in the week they gave up like 24 missed tackles or had 24, like the most Clemson's ever had. So I think that meeting was certainly warranted. With that in mind, Kelly Graham, I expect to see a unbelievable effort from these Tigers, a really motivated effort, a high-level performance defensively to where maybe we see them put together their most complete game.
Perhaps. I think that they're definitely going to be motivated, but I think that it's fair to doubt this defense a little bit right now. Now, they did put it together in the second and third quarters against Florida State. They were a lot better. The first quarter and the fourth quarter, those were problems. And you gave up a lot of rushing yards to two of FSU's backs who are not even their main guy, but are still two good backs. Syracuse has Sean Tucker, and Sean Tucker had a really good game against Clemson last year, 157 yards. So he's feeling good. And then we've talked about this with Syracuse, the emergence of not just Schrader, but OG, Oronde Gadsden II, who's become that go-to guy. The teams that have really hurt Clemson through the air this year, and there's only one, it's Wake Forest, they had multiple options. So I do think that's a concern for Cuse when we know you want to throw the ball, you want to target Gadsden 10 or 15 times. We know that's obvious. So Clemson can at least focus in on that. But I do see this offense having at least some success against this Clemson defense. Mac, what do you think?
I think that's what's going to be interesting is just how does Syracuse decide to attack these guys? Is it going to, trusty Rusty there with Gadsden, the things that he has been able to do, the positions that they have put him in? It was really interesting talking with Schrader on Wednesday saying, this guy's a flex tight end. He's not really a wide receiver. And I'm just
he is huge.
That's crazy to think about. Yeah, being 6'5", and they line him up in the backfield, out wide in the slot, at the H-back at times. And so it's almost like, where's Waldo? You better know where he is because they're going to be targeting him. They're going to be, trying to get him the football. So what does that look like? Now, since the Wake Forest game where Clemson went man-to-man every snap and got burned every snap and just abused almost, They have hit it better and done a lot more zone coverage behind the guys. So it'll be interesting to see, do they want to revert back to that, knowing that there's really only this one threat and just have help over the top of him and give him the attention that he has certainly deserved? Or do they just do business as normal? What they kind of have found out has been working in the passing game since that game. Going to be interesting. But going back to Cuse offensively, I'm very interested to see how much Garrett Schrader runs, whether it's design or by nature, just because that's what he wants to do. That's the guy that he is, where he uses that big, strong frame that he has and gets after guys and really can make some crazy things happen. And then on top of that, where do they line up Sean Tucker? That's kind of the second wall.
Everywhere.
You don't know where he is because he's such a playmaker, and we've seen them be very creative with him. Try to get that matchup, try to get him on a linebacker out in space, and then let him go to work. So really, that three-headed monster from Syracuse going to get a ton of attention, as it should. that leads you to ask, KG, who else steps up? Is there this, role player guy that is going to be kind of forgotten by Clemson that, has a career type day?
And if I'm Clemson, I'm saying, let's see who that guy is, because I don't want Gadsden or Sean Tucker to beat me, or at least one of them. You need to try to take one of them out, whether it's limiting Sean Tucker or limiting Aronde Gadsden. And really, Mac, I think the offenses in this game for both teams should be the least of the concern for each fan base. I think Syracuse's offense is going to play well. I think Clemson's offense, especially after FSU, where you saw a little more creativity than you did against Boston College. The O-line has been playing well, and Shipley is just being explosive. But I will say for Cuse's defense, which is one of the best defenses in the country and the best right now in the ACC, I think this game is really about that defense and how they can confuse DJ. Syracuse under Dino Babers, they're never really about getting after the quarterback. They have three guys up front. They're not really about that. They're about confusing the quarterback with their coverage on the back end and trying to force turnovers. This is a game where DJ's got to make the right decisions and where Clemson's wide receivers have got to play well. You can't see drops. You can't see these different types of things. And different receivers have started to emerge. Things are looking better for this receiving core. But if they play anything like they did last year, it's going to be rough. But I do think the tight ends, Antonio Williams, Bo Collins, you're seeing guys play really consistently for Clemson.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is two very different teams from a year ago. I think that's what's so exciting.
It is. It's very different.
Yeah, when you look at this game from a 10,000-foot view here and look at just the matchup in particular, this is the first ever 6-0 or better matchup in Death Valley. I mean, that's crazy. And big shout out to Austin Pendergast for finding that out. Go check him out on Twitter. If you're a Clemson fan, if you're not, don't waste your time. That's all that there is. There's some great nuggets about Clemson. But that was mind-blowing to me. Out of the 81, I think it was, years or whatever, how many years they've been playing in Death Valley, that was nuts. This is going to be the first time. Shout out to Syracuse for being the team to get that done.
Who would have thought?
Who had the money on that? I mean, you just cashed out. Congratulations. When I look at this defense, KG, it's funny. I had this little revelation almost when we were talking with Schrader, and we just asked him. We straight up said, hey, you're a totally different guy. You look this and that, blah, blah, blah. And he said, not really. I mean, I'm the same guy. We just have a better offense. We run things where it's not as predictable, where it's not third down before we have to throw the football. And I thought that was very interesting because that started to make me think about Clemson's situation and the offensive scheme that is now around DJ and the things that we're seeing from him, not taking any credit away from DJ as a player at all. But I just have to think that we said a year ago, I kept remembering my one kind of defense was everyone's like, man, this offense is so boring. This offense isn't doing this and that. And my response always was, well, they can't do this boring stuff well. So why would they try to do the tricky stuff? Now they can do the vanilla stuff so well. And we're seeing some trick plays. We're seeing a lot more motion. We're seeing a quarterback that can process all of that information. And now let's do more. Let's open the playbook up more. And so I think you've got to give Coach Streeter and this staff, Dabo Sweeney has certainly called some of these tricky play calls. You got to give them a lot of credit for number one, believing in their guy, but also now unveiling stuff and, really letting it go. So I'm with you. I think the game plan for Clemson continues to be who you are. It doesn't matter what defense you're playing. These guys are fantastic in coverage, not allowing points. And in the red zone, they do not give up a bunch of points once they allow you to get down in there. Clemson, of course, has scored on 100% of their red zone trips.
So perfect.
I'm excited to see this attack, but I think the model for success for Clemson is get your tight ends involved heavily, get Shipley involved heavily, and then when we throw it downfield, let's make some big plays for our quarterback from the wide receiver position.
Last year's Syracuse game was a little bit of a breakout game for Davis Allen, too. So I think you're going to see Davis Allen and Brenning Stool. And people forget this. Yes, Syracuse has new coaches on the offensive side, Beck and Anai, and those have made a huge difference. Clemson also has a new offensive coordinator. People haven't really mentioned that. Tony Elliott, who's now the head coach of Virginia, moved on. And yeah, Streeter comes from the Tony Elliott tree, but it's obvious that there's a set of fresh eyes on this. Right. And that he was able to, in the offseason, say, all right, DJ's our guy. How do we mold this offense to his skill set? And, of course, DJ's been playing a ton better. But Clemson also has a new OC. I feel like people don't mention that.
Yeah, I think one more quick thing, KG, that is interesting about Clemson's offense that still people, I don't think, are giving it enough credit as really it deserves. These guys have scored 30-plus points in all 7 games. How many times has that happened, you ask, in the history of Clemson football? 3. This is the 3rd time ever.
Wow.
This is legitimately one of the best offenses Clemson has ever had. And so when you see the consistency of it, you see the way that the quarterback's playing, the offensive line is so much improved, and the things that those guys are doing as a unit, just all 5 being able to play all the time together. This team's rolling. They really are. And I think they haven't played their best ball yet. I think they're only getting better, which is why this game is so intriguing. Both teams. I don't think both teams are anywhere close to what they can be Final Four.
Well, Schrader said that. He told us. He said, we're only 6 games into this new offense, and we can be better. The other factor here, Mac, the other kind of elephant in the room, and this is this plays into my stat as well, and then we'll give our picks. This is Syracuse's first ACC road game. It's just their 2nd road game of the season. The first road game was at UConn, which does not count. Even if people are saying, Kelly, there were 25,000 people there or whatever. That's cute. I mean, it's UConn, and Syracuse was so much better than UConn that it didn't matter. So I think that's a factor, and my stat really is the Death Valley factor of it all here. Clemson has won 37 straight. You've probably heard that a million times, but it's true. And the only loss was to Pittsburgh, the shovel pass game of 2016. Syracuse has played 1 road game. Syracuse has never won in Death Valley. I think these are factors. It's similar to what we talked about with the Clemson-NC State game. There is a built-in advantage. If Vegas gives a team, that was my doorbell. If Vegas gives a team 3.5 points or whatever for being at home, I think for Clemson and Death Valley, that goes to 5 or 6. I mean, that's just how important that home field advantage is. And as Dabo said, Matt, grab your biscuits, tape your ankles, let's go. I love that quote from Dabo.
I'm with that. Hey, as I kind of respond here about that Death Valley thing, could you find what Clemson is against the spread for me? Kind of live for our viewers here while I'm kind of rambling.
Oh, yeah. On the season?
Yeah, on this season.
Hold on. Can we pause for 1 second just so I make sure that no one is truly at my door?
Absolutely.
Okay, stand by.
All right, update. Was it a package? Was it a delivery?
I wish it was a package. The guys are here to treat the grass. Keep the grass looking right.
The grass.
That's exciting. But Mac, please continue with your point here.
Okay, there we go. So I think, KG, honestly, when you look at this Death Valley experience, when you look at, how much does that matter? Syracuse is going to roll up to the stadium on Saturday morning. They're going to be saying, we ain't in Syracuse anymore, okay? It's going to be a different shade of orange. And I think that the lucky thing is it's not a night game. I mean, because that would just be miserable. But you have to think this new offense, the new things, all the motions, all the creativity, it's going to cause some problems not being able to just hear. It's going to cause some problems having that chaos that is Death Valley and the crowd that those guys have. I can't wait to see it. It's going to be fantastic. It's homecoming. It's going to be loaded up. So the Valley, it's going to be rocking for a noon game.
It's a factor. I think it would be a factor if this game was in the Dome, because the Dome has been lit this year. It absolutely has. Okay, so on the season, Mac, Clemson is 4-3 against the spread.
Okay, so not that good still.
But they've covered 3 straight.
Yeah.
So they covered against Georgia Tech. They didn't cover against Furman, La Tech, or Wake. But then they covered against NC State, BC, and FSU. That's something to keep in mind.
So that's a little interesting because you look at some of those games, you're like, is there really even a real spread? So that's fascinating. When I look at Furman and I look at La Tech.
Right, if you want to throw those out.
Yeah, those are always interesting games. Let me give you a quick key for both these teams before you make a pick here. For Clemson, I think really it comes to that defense. It's all about being who you are, being who you're supposed to be, being who you're expected to be, and playing at a really high level. We've seen it at different phases at different times. This needs to be the game, this caliber on national television for everybody to see, where Clemson kind of puts it together and says, here we are. We're hitting our stride going into October, November, where championships are won. And so for me, for Clemson, it's all about that defense. For Syracuse, it's almost the exact opposite for that offense to weather the storm. Because when you're on the road, when you're playing in this type of environment against this caliber of team, things can happen. If it does, don't fall apart. Just understand that you're a team that's built for this. You're a team that has had success early. You have that confidence that you and I were talking about. What's more important, the confidence of doing what you have or being tested and having adverse situations?
True.
don't let it phase you. And I think Garrett Schrader is experienced enough. I think that this defense for Syracuse is experienced enough to where you've got to stay locked in. This is a 60-minute game, and you have historically been in this game all the way to the very end.
Let's make some picks, Mac. I struggled with this, and those stats are interesting that Clemson's covered the last three. But I'm thinking a little differently than you here. I think I have a lot of faith in this Syracuse defense. And I think this defense and this format and this scheme has bothered Clemson in the past. And Chestnut and Williams and Michael Jones are all going to play, is what we've been hearing, at least from what we know. I mean, it's still, iffy, but whatever. I think Syracuse covers. I'm taking Syracuse plus 13.5. I think Clemson wins this game by 10.
I'm going to give you an opportunity to change that after I say this. Listen, you talk about the defense, all the excitement about it. They play a dysfunctional Louisville team that doesn't know who they are. Hold them to 7. They play a horrific UConn team that, whatever, JV teams can beat these guys. They play a Purdue team that lights them up, has billion-yard passing, scores 29, but they win. They play a Virginia team that you and I could stop at this point because they can't catch the ball.
Okay.
And then they play Wagner, is what it is. They play a Devin Leary-less NC State.
Mm-hmm.
I love the defense. I thought they'd be good. They haven't played anybody. This is a much different beast that you're walking into.
I mean, that's the argument. That's the argument against Syracuse. I get that.
Yeah. So with that in mind, are you still hanging high on that defense?
Yeah.
You feeling good about it? Okay.
I think they cover.
I'm taking Clemson. I think Clemson rolls. The over-under has moved. I think it's 49.5 now. I'm probably going to take the over there. I think that's a smart play.
Yeah.
Even though both these defenses are really good, I think over is kind of the number you want to hit there.
There were 31 total points scored in this game last year, but as we've said, these two teams are so different. Mac, maybe I'm just being swayed by our guy Garrett. We had him on. Yeah. And dude looks like he wanted to kill Clemson.
You hang out with the Axeman. You're talking with Garrett Schrader. You're an orange girl. I understand. I get it.
I think Clemson wins by 10. So Syracuse covers. I think it's like 37-27, which actually was a score like in 2014 or something. Okay. Let's talk about the rest of these games. That's obviously the big one. And we're super excited to watch that one at noon. At 12:30 on Saturday, Mac, we have Duke traveling to Miami. 4-3 Duke, 1-2 in the league at Miami, 3-3 overall, 1-1 in the ACC. Both of these teams have been so fascinating this year in very different ways. Duke has been so much better than we thought. I'm pretty sure Duke has already passed their Vegas win total with 4 wins. Yeah. And they've looked so much better than we thought. All their losses, except kind of Georgia Tech, are quality losses. They should have beaten North Carolina. And then Miami has just been Miami. They've just been so hard to figure out. This game is at Miami. We'll see what kind of atmosphere this is. You've got a road Duke. Duke, as we have talked about on this podcast, really struggles on the road. TVD is out here slinging that thing, but they still can't run it. And Duke's offense seemed to figure it out last week, but also that was in Durham. So what are your thoughts on this game, Matt?
Yeah, all those things that you just pointed out are very important because road Duke is so different than home Duke, as well as seeing the offense, what they're going to do against the Miami defense that has started to really figure themselves out and really start to play better, especially getting after the quarterback. These guys rank second, not in the ACC. They do rank second in the ACC, but also all of Power 5 with 21 sacks. So they're getting after the quarterback. Hakeem Mesidor, he has been balling. It's been so fun to watch this young man. And I thought that that's what we would see from him, in the preseason, and it just took a little while. And now he's starting to figure it out. He's tied for first in the ACC with 5 sacks. So from that aspect, I think there's going to be a little bit of trouble for Duke. I just have to think that our guy Riley Leonard is getting more and more comfortable in the offense. He's very efficient, very effective. He takes, what the defense gives you. At times, though, I would like to see him push the ball downfield a little bit more. Use Calhoun, use Jordan Moore, extend that thing out. Eli Pancol, let's get those things, really launching downfield. I think a game ago, he averaged like 5 yards of completion or 5 yards an attempt. So would like to see that a little bit more from him. Defensively for Duke, we've seen some improvement. They've gotten their hands on the football, but ultimately not as good as it started, KG. And I think you're going against a Miami team that they're throwing the football. And a lot of people are saying, well, what's the biggest difference between Miami for the first 4 games and the last 2? you and I have kind of talked about this for a couple of weeks now. The offense was Gaddis Cristobal. They were going to run what they wanted to run. They ran the ball like 50% of the time. Dink and dump passes really put TVD in this phone box to make completions in. The last two games, they kind of threw that away and pushed the ball downfield, letting him rip it. He threw it 60 times. He threw it 50 times. I would love to see them combined it to kind of get a little bit of this, a little bit of that, to where we have this more balanced, holistic offensive approach here, because I think that's where you can really start firing. But at the end of the day, you got to use what you have, and that's a great quarterback in TVD, which in the last two games, he's thrown it 100 times. He's completing it next to 70% of the time, nearly 1,000 yards for 5 touchdowns. So let him throw the football.
Oh, I agree. Let TVD cook. Let him throw the football. And, Mac, part of my concern here with Duke is road Duke, of course. But their offense figured it out last week, but they were playing North Carolina. Right. How much of that is North Carolina allowing them to figure out their offense? Yeah. My stat, and so actually, I want to start with this because we've talked about how Miami struggled to score in the red zone. And Miami
to score anywhere. They just struggle to score, period. Touchdowns.
They're about middle of the pack in FBS. They rank about 60th. They've had 32 red zone trips this season. They've scored a touchdown on 19 of them. So they scored a touchdown a little over 50% of the time. Duke is very similar. 33 red zone trips, 19 touchdowns. That's not scoring. That's just touchdowns because you also, field goals count. So neither of these teams is great scoring in the red zone. And my stat that is going to sway me on this game, Mac, it's the UNC factor for Duke, and it's this. Duke has the second worst passing defense in the ACC, giving up 260 yards per game. I really think TVD is going to cook. All that together, and I know you think this line's a little disrespectful, I think Duke's bounce back is really a product of UNC. I'm taking Miami to cover.
Oh, my gosh. Unbelievable.
I'm having faith in Miami.
Well, good luck with that.
And I didn't last week. I took Virginia Tech to cover, but that was lucky. They dominated that game last week.
That's true. That's very true. A couple of things here. I think when I look at both these teams, and the biggest concern that you just brought up there for Miami, great offense these last couple of games, moving all over the field, and then just can't finish. I think the emergence of Colby Young is really going to be beneficial for TVD. Massive wide receiver, 6'5", 210 pounds, 250 pounds, has really turned into a go-getter. I think we see him take another step. Hopefully Xavier Restrepo comes back, and maybe we see this late season,
huge.
Kind of surge from Miami, which would be instrumental there. When I look at Duke and I look at what they do really, really well offensively, it's run the football. Now, Coleman is out, and so they're going to have to do that kind of, three-man weave with Waters, with Leonard, and with Moore at the running back position. But the thing here is Miami does not give up a 90 yards rushing a game. So if they take that away, how comfortable are you throwing it 50 times? With all that said,
so you're taking Duke?
Nope. Miami can't score. Oh, yeah, I am taking Duke. I'm sorry. Miami can't score. Duke can't score.
Whew.
9 points might be the total of the game here. So I'm going to take Duke. I think they cover the 9. The over-under's 58. I have to think it's under that. I think it's going to be just a nasty game.
I agree with you on that. I think this may be the total I like the most of the weekend is under 58 for Duke Miami. I do think it's going to be a little nasty.
We'll see. The stat, though, with throwing the football, they might get in that end zone. We'll see. They haven't yet, but they might.
Duke on the road, man. All right, 2 more games here. Another game that I really struggle with this spread pick. Boston College at number 13, Wake Forest. BC's 2-4. They're 1-3 in the league. Wake Forest is 5-1, 1-1 in the ACC. This is a 3:30 p.m. game on ACCN. Wake is favored by 21 points. The total is 61.5. Wake is coming off a bye, so is BC. So both teams can kind of figure themselves out. Jerk got mugged in the Clemson game. He got beat up, and that game was not as much of a blowout as the score indicates, but BC definitely couldn't score. So it didn't feel like it was really ever going to be an issue for Clemson in that game. And BC's coming off Clemson, which can be tough when you have to bounce back for depth issues and fatigue and all these different types of things. And you got Sam Hartman on the Wake Forest side. So I think Wake wins this game, Mac. But that spread worries me. Does it worry you?
It's a massive number.
Yeah.
Anytime you see 21 in conference play, not by a team that's the Clemson Tigers. That's fascinating.
But they are Wake. Probably the second best team in the league right now.
And I think you got to give them respect. These guys have been ranked 20 straight weeks, longest active streak in the ACC. Wake Forest is good, and they need respect. And I think the only reason that I might take them here is because that defense has been playing so much better. 2 games in a row now, they have cut their the team they're playing rushing attack in half. They held FSU to 110 yards. They held Army to 200. I think they averaged 3-something or something around there. So to me, we're seeing improvement in an area that Wake Forest has held them back and been their Achilles heel, which has been that defense. I'm excited to see them after a bye. I almost think, like a couple of teams that we have spoken about kind of these last 2 weeks, this might hurt them because they were playing so well. They were so hot. Now you take a break. And I even saw Coach Clausen saying, you really don't want to take a bye when you're playing so good. You want to keep going. You want to keep rolling. Will be interesting to see kind of what do they look like. Are there any rust there? But I mean, Sam's being Sam. He's just so good. He's so close to tying ACC history there, moving into the 4th spot. With Deshaun Watson, with Trevor Lawrence, with 90 touchdowns that he's responsible for. So he's just a guy, KG, that man, I think that he's going to be the answer. I think he's going to get it done. I'm taking Wake to cover. And I might go over.
Over 61.5. I don't know if BC scores enough for you, but I'm with you. We agree. We're both taking the Deeks to cover. I just think BC is in such a tough spot right now, and they showed good fight against Clemson, but they still couldn't score. And when you think, okay, both coming off a bye, BC's coming off Clemson where they scored 3 points and got beat up. Wake's coming off Army where they dominated and they rolled. So Wake is in a much better position. And I doubted Wake. I took Army to cover against Wake, and I feel like I got to switch up the karma here because that wasn't right. That was just stupid. My stat in this game, Mac, I was thinking back and I saw that number, and my first thought was, how many times has Wake even beaten BC by 21? Ever? Well, in 2 of their last 4 meetings, Wake has won by 21 or more points.
Whoa. Wow.
Yeah. Now, both those games were at Boston College, weirdly enough, but Wake has kind of dominated this series as of late. So
that's good.
Wake to cover.
So is this a guarantee right here?
A Gramlich and Macklin guarantee?
You can just have it. You don't have to put me in this.
I don't know if I feel like it's a complete guarantee, but I feel pretty good about it.
Okay. It's a lock. I just think when I look at BC, it's Zay Flowers and everybody else.
And he's special.
Most of the time when he walks on the field, he's one of the best, if not the best player out there. But I just don't know. I think Wake is going to get after Phil Jakovic. I think they're going to make him uncomfortable. I think schematically they're going to do some things to take Zay away. And when you do that, there is nothing left for BC right now in their current state. So it's going to be interesting to see, just what BC is able to do the rest of the year. But like you said, I'm taking Wake here.
All right, so we found a pick we agree on this week. Our last
I didn't think it would be that one. I did not think.
No, me neither. I thought it would be a different one. All right, our last game is just kind of crazy, and we'll try to predict it, but I mean, who the hell knows? Pittsburgh at Louisville. Pitt is 4-2 overall, 1-1 in the league. They have that weird loss to Georgia Tech. Louisville is 3-3 and 1-3 in the league, but they're coming off a win over Virginia without Malik Cunningham. Louisville's a 2.5-point favorite. Total's 55. This is the primetime game on ACC Network, 8 o'clock. Louisville, even more the team of mystery, right? Because they won without Malik, and they're coming off a bye week. It sounds like Malik is going to play, which is a good thing. But Malik also has not thrown the ball well this year. So even more of a team of mystery because we're seeing a team that's going to look different than they did 2 weeks ago when they won.
Right. And that's who Louisville is. That's who Louisville has been these last couple of years. And, it's funny. I jumped on a Louisville-based podcast earlier this week, the Pink Seat guys, which I love that because when I went to Louisville, I saw that. I was like, why are their seats pink? And it's kind of an inside joke there. They're just faded red. I think they fixed it now. It's not pink anymore. But in that regard, it was interesting talking with them and their point of view. Because I love jumping in with, not that they're local, but local people who are just focused on that team, right? Because they see things differently. They know a little bit maybe more inside the program, things like that. And they asked me straight up, they were like, why has Malik Cunningham regressed? What do you see? Because he's thrown 3 touchdowns. I know he didn't play last week. He's thrown 3 touchdowns in 5 games, whatever it is. That is nuts. And for me, I reflect back, KG, to our interview, to our sit down with Coach Satterfield, where he said there were times in practice where we do not let him run. We force him to throw the football. We don't allow him to use his best attribute. He didn't say it like that. But when I think about that, I kind of think back to DJU and the confidence thing from a year ago. I think of how important is it at the quarterback position to be the guy, to understand that I control all of this. I'm the reason that it goes. And if you're doubting yourself, if you're doubting your abilities, if you're thinking about staying in the pocket to force a pass instead of taking off and being creative, how much does that affect your play?
Sure.
And I think that's what we've seen. Now, ironically enough, Leak is like 3rd in the conference in rushing yards and 2nd in rushing touchdowns. But I do think that has negatively affected him as a passer. I do think some of the things that they have done from a scheme, coaching, personnel deal has hurt him. Yeah. And I hope we see a turnaround. I hope that, they kind of use some of the things, because they called a different game, obviously, without him, but some things that I think that he could do really well. I'd love to see that type of game plan with him this night against Pittsburgh, who's obviously a better defense. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see, but I think that's a real concern.
That's a great point. I remember that conversation with Satterfield, and he did play well against Florida State. That was a great game, and a game that Louisville probably should have won. When we asked Mike Norvell, because we interviewed Norvell closely after Satterfield, so it was on my mind. I was like, did you guys do that with Jordan Travis at all? Did you tell him in practice you got to stay in the pocket and throw it? And he was like, no, we didn't do that with Jordan Travis. We let Jordan Travis
why would
be
you do
him.
That? It's so weird.
So the contrast was very interesting. It was. For Louisville, the other kind of strategy I've taken with this team that I've noticed, this is what they've done this year. Loss, win, loss, win, loss, win. I mean, that's what they've done. Now, here's what's crazy about Louisville. They're kind of the opposite of Syracuse. Louisville has only played 2 home games. This is just their 3rd home game of the season. They've played 4 road games. So that's been tough. Like that, we talked about Louisville's schedule being difficult, and it is. The fact that they're back at home, I know this goes against loss, win, loss, win, loss, win. But I also think Pitt is so one-dimensional right now.
Right.
And they're missing their left tackle, which, Mac, I know you can elaborate on. And Louisville's really good at rushing the passer. I think they're going to be able to limit Abanikanda. So I think I'm taking Louisville to cover here. And it's against the win-loss, but they've been a lot better at home.
It's crazy to look here and see, because I'm basically picking between Izzy or Malik. That's where I feel like this comes down to, because both guys are just so vital to the team. So much of the success, except for a week ago with Louisville, or 2 weeks, is a big piece of what they do. And so to me, when I look at the team of mystery, this would be perfect for them to get a win here, because it goes against everything we don't know. Keep us on our toes here. For Pittsburgh and just how special, Izzy is. And again, I joked about somebody scoring. He just scored again. He just had another rushing.
He's ridiculous.
Historical performance. He's 5th in FBS with 138, 140 yards per game rushing. He's that guy. And I think that, Pitt has identified that this is what we're going to do. We're going to run the football. We're going to be this team that is going to trust our guy, and we're going to give it to him, give it to him, and give it to him. When they decide to throw, as you mentioned, that could be a problem because Carter Warren is out. He's done for the year. Louisville leads Power 5 with sacks, and they do not schematically draw up a bunch of crazy stuff, all these exotic blitzes like Pittsburgh does, like Clemson does. They've just been beating you with their guys up front, and it has been fascinating. Yasir Abdullah has had an amazing season. When I see the things that he is doing, Diaby is playing really, really well. All these guys are – they're really having a great season individually. That goes into the part of why can't we all get on the same page at the same time to get the result that we want? I think because of what you said, it's at home. There hadn't been a lot of home games. It's a night game. Louisville is a tough place to play when they want to be rocking. I think this team's going to come out, get some support from these fans. I think it's going to be a tough environment. Defense wins the day here for Louisville. I'm taking the Cards.
Wow. Okay. So we're both
So with that in
taking
mind,
Louisville.
everybody go to the bank and bet heavily against Louisville, and you'll win.
They don't make sense ever. And Mac, we're really tempting fate here, going against the loss win.
Right.
We're tempting
Right.
fate, but it's very crazy that this is only Louisville's third home game. What a weird thing with their schedule. And let's assume the pink seats will be full and the bourbon will be flowing, and the fans will help this team out.
I hope so, because it's a special place. It's a cool environment, and those guys deserve it. As hard as they work, they need to have a slam dunk in regards to who shows up and the amount of fans there. My alarm just went off, KG. I have to go get after these ribs. That's it from us. We got to go. I got to get out of here. Another awesome episode. So much fun breaking down these little but impactful games this weekend. Can't wait on Monday to break it all down, especially that one in the Valley. That one's going to be fun to talk about. But if you guys do not have SiriusXM, go get it. Get it in your car. Get it on your phone. Take us anywhere that you want to go. As KG said, we got to that 1,000 mark on YouTube. Big shout out to you guys. Let's keep it going. Go over there, rate, review, subscribe. Always fun to hear from you guys. But until next time, we'll see y'all.